Ever since Super Metroid defined the initial framework back on the Super Nintendo in 1994, Metroidvanias have been a staple genre of video games. Defined primarily by their 2D precision platforming, vast interconnected worlds and myriad of unlockable power-ups that allow players to explore new areas that were previously inaccessible due to environmental blockades, Metroidvania design philosophies have given life to countless memorable experiences, such as the recently released Hollow Knight, Axiom Verge, and Ori and the Blind Forest, to name but a few. Like every other genre template in video games, a Metroidvania is often at its most interesting when it subverts common tropes in order to carve out its own niche. Tori 2, for instance, keeps the interconnected world and environmental blockades, but throws away the concept of power-ups. The resulting game forces the player to rely on their own skills in order to progress, creating a unique experience that sees the player's actual real-world abilities leveling up in order for them to move on, rather than those of their digital counterpart. For some, like Guacamelee 2, sequel to indie darling Guacamelee that was released back in 2013, the changes are subtle but many, and help make a kinetic action platformer with a surprising amount of depth and a whole lot of heart. Whereas other Metroidvanias like Hollow Knight drip feed a slow stream of abilities to the player, making each new power feel satisfying and limitless in its scope, thanks in no small part to the challenges that must be overcome in order to gain them, Guacamelee throws unlockable abilities at you with reckless gleeful abandon. Within the space of an hour, protagonist Juan sees his basic moveset substantially expanded upon, allowing you to access out of reach platforms via a fiery uppercut, break through blue blocks with a charging strike, sneak through small crevices as a chitin, or even swap between level-altering dimensions via a quick tap of a button. It's a delightful change of pace from more traditional entries in the genre. If a Metroidvania is only as good as its power-ups, Guacamelee 2 is a tour de force. The game grants abilities with a playful confidence, knowing full well that the more it piles on the player, the more fluid and fun the game is as a result. Throwing yourself around the screen is a simple pleasure, with movement as snappy and as tight as Juan's tights. Although most of the special moves are carried over from the first game, there are plenty of new things on offer here too, as well as additional abilities that serve to enhance those that make a return. Take the Chitin, for example. Previously nothing more than a glorified way of progressing through smaller tunnels, it now has the ability to batter the shit out of enemies, as well as being able to launch itself at bumpers like the poultry-shaped pinball, all thanks to powers afforded via Chitin temples hidden throughout the world. All of the areas you explore are crammed full of carefully designed obstacles to overcome using this quickly awarded skill set. Swapping between dimensions reveals new platforms, and some of the game's best sections rely on jumping between them in order to navigate a tricky route that relies on multiple abilities in order to progress. What's even better is when the game remixes these ideas further, introducing more complex challenges that push the player to their absolute limit. To use the same example as before, there are numerous areas where both the living and dead dimensions are mixed together via a series of waves that move across the screen, offering brief respite from environmental dangers whilst also removing key platforms and other essential safety nets. It's here that Guacamelee 2 truly shines, the game consistently as strong in its design as other 2D platformers of its ilk, such as Rayman Legends or the 2D Mario titles. The way the game introduces new ideas, expands upon them, and then further remixes them is sublime, and even offers up optional challenge rooms off the beaten track that present an increasingly hard variation of the concepts introduced along the main route, with players rewarded additional heart or stamina containers for beating them. The whole game can be played in 4-player co-op too, something I didn't try because, well, to be honest, I can see the game descending into chaos as soon as multiple players are on screen together. Its finely crafted platforming segments becoming a messy free-for-all. Still, it's there if you're into that. Puzzling passages are interspersed with combat sequences that are as equally energetic as their platforming counterparts. Suplexing a skeleton never gets old, and every ability designed to help movement doubles as a wrestling-themed special move that can be combined together to create simplistic combos. Additionally, combat can be improved via a skill tree system, with buffs and passive abilities purchased both via coins collected through combat and by experimenting with the game's myriad of options for batter and fought about. It's a basic system, but a solid one. As the game progresses, enemy variation increases, with new types of bone-based adversaries showing up to try and smack your luchador bits clean off. Shielded enemies also become a common occurrence, their colour corresponding to a move that must be performed before they can take damage, as well as enemies that can only be hurt once you swap to the correct dimension. I've never personally been much of a fan of this kind of combat. It was one of my main issues with the Ninja Theory DMC reboot, and it's not particularly very fun here either. Getting pulverised by enemies from another dimension whilst desperately trying to chain together enough special moves to actually deal damage to other foes is frustrating, to say the least, and led to far more resets than I would have liked. Thankfully, the game's fights aren't hugely challenging, and interesting, creatively inventive enemy designs go a long way to ease these frustrations. Boss fights are also a highlight, bombastic, colourful set pieces that test the player's skill with integrated platforming challenges and entertain with a healthy dose of silliness. The whole game is silly. I mean, of course it is. Look at it. Set 7 years after the original, Guacamelee 2 once again puts you in the spandex boots of Juan, now soft, weak and living a normal life after his defeat of Talitha at the end of the first game. However, a threat from an alternate reality where Juan failed his task then another took his place, only to become a bigger villain than Talitha, sees the player travel to the darkest timeline in order to save the now fragile Metaverse from destruction. At no point does the game ever take itself seriously, frequently breaking the fourth wall and poking fun at both itself and even its indie game contemporaries throughout its criminally short runtime. Its narrative carried forward by an eclectic cast of identical dope wizards from other dimensions. Every single line in the game is a joke, or at least a setup for one. It's a bombardment of crap dad humour, delivered by a colourful cast of characters that are joyously one-dimensional and have no need to be anything other than a method for delivering a groan-worthy one-liner. To the game's credit, there are some clever environmental jokes too. For example, in one town, a lone mariachi musician is close to death, sitting alone on a stage where his band used to perform. By swapping to the world of the dead, you see his deceased band members waiting excitedly for his arrival, a crowd forming to witness their first post-life show together again. It's nice, and adds a lovely little bit of depth to a world that hinges on comedy alone. It all looks stunning too, every environment dense with colour and texture, and the various characters, bosses and unlockable costumes all designed with the same level of finesse. The soundtrack is repetitive, but generic enough to be largely ignored as you work your way through the game. Guacamelee 2 is a fast and furious Metroidvania jam-packed with tight puzzle platforming and punchy, albeit often frustrating combat that is all in all an absolute joy to play. It's beautiful, groan-worthy, challenging but fair, breezy and fun to experience. Guacamelee 2 is a must-buy for both fans of the original and those looking for a light-hearted Metroidvania to spend a little time with. I just wish it was a little longer, and maybe on Switch as well, but that's probably a definite. It'll be on Switch soon, I'm sure. Thanks for watching. This is 7 out of 10. This was a review. We do these on the channel fairly often sometimes it's like the month's break, but I'm always playing things. I only ever tend to review things that I like. I really like this, hence the review. If you want to see more like this, hit that subscribe button, give this a share, like it, whack that like button, just send it to your mum. Your mum might like this. Your friend Graham might like this as well. Send it to him. I actually would like him to see it, so if you could send it, that would be fantastic. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.